I'm Suzanne Murdock, and you're listening to Powering Productivity. Each episode, I explore the energy that connection, expertise, and flexible working can bring to your business. Welcome, I'm your host, Suzanne Murdock, and today I'm joined by Jane Sartin. Jane joined the Flexible Space Association as Executive Director at the end of 2018, trade association representing, supporting and promoting the Flexible Workspace Centre across the UK. She's led a significant number of changes for the organisation since then, including its change of name and more recently a new website. And prior to joining FlexSA, Jane's career comprised roles in the public sector, commercial and charity sectors, including 9 years at the British Library. Jane regularly hosts webinars on industry topics, and very recently her team hosted the annual FlexSA conference, which was jam-packed with extra industry experts, info on trends, and some amazing panel discussions. So Jane, welcome. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Good. Jane, I'm really excited to talk about the evolution of the office model, what trends you're experiencing now. A lot of the workforce are back to the office, how we interact with the office has changed, and really how the flex operators have to embrace this going forward. But I just wanted to touch on, there were some really positive takeaways from the FlexSA conference last week. And I really wanted to give a bit of a snapshot to what came out of that for people who weren't necessarily there. So I think the key thing is flex isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's not going away. There'll be a big move towards the hybrid model, so people maybe splitting their time between the office and home or co-working spaces, and very much the hub and spoke approach. So a big surge towards the regions, maybe moving slightly away from the cities, but still that requirement for city hubs. And I think placemaking being massive parts of this going forward, not necessarily all about the bricks and mortar. There's still a lot of work to be done with regards to promoting and rolling out company culture and communications from the corporate or the actual business end user's perspective. And one of the things that came across to me was it's very much about choice and personalisation and productivity and energy going forward. And then the other thing that jumped out was more the need for automation, technology, and seamless integration for the end user, both from the flex operator perspective and the member or the user's perspective. So there was some fantastic industry speakers and some great information and trends that came out last week. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, and it's been hard work organising it. It was the first major Flexible Space Association in-person gathering since 2019, and I think we found that people we had good attendance, and people that were there really enjoyed the opportunity to come back together and see people face to face. It was quite strange seeing some people face to face that I'd only seen online over the last 18 months, and I kind of almost felt I knew them, but it was that they were obviously maybe taller than I expected and other things. So but yeah, in terms of the content, it felt very positive. I mean, we set out for it to be a positive look at the world of flexible workspace in this new way of working that we're now experiencing as we hopefully head out of the pandemic. And it did feel like that. There was a lot of optimism, I think, for the role that flexible workspace can play in the future.
Yeah, no, that really came across me. I watched it virtually. I think there was quite a few virtual members there were watching it, but that's exactly how it came over to me. It was very, very positive, not upbeat.
Yeah, no,
that continue.
Absolutely, yes. No, that certainly felt in the room as well. So glad that came across online. And I think we had quite a range of speakers, from Richard Morris, who's CEO of IWG in the UK, to people that are running smaller single site business centres, and I think overall that the feeling is that there is a big part for flexible workspace to be playing now as we're all changing the way that we work.
Yeah, and it was interesting, like you say, there was different size organisations speaking, so you had more the corporate size flex spaces and then the SMEs, and getting different perspectives there about how things are working.
Yeah, and that's
really useful.
Yeah, and it's really important to us as the trade association for the industry, and that our members really do span the entire range of flexible workspace, and that can be the single site co-working centre in a small town, to the likes of TOG and IWG and Workspace Group and others that are, you know, very, very sizably different, but at the end of the day, trying to deliver a, you know, similar product.
Yeah, completely. So let's crack on with the questions.
Yeah.
So Jane, I'm really interested to understand what grabbed you about what a move towards working in the flexible workspace industry.
So as you set out, I've had quite a diverse career in terms of at least the sectors that I've been in, which I think prepared me well for this role. And we're a small organisation, so I need to do all kinds of things in the role. As we were a small team, so that was certainly an aspect that looking at what the role encompassed, the things that I could draw on my experience for. But clearly, 3 years ago, it was an industry that there was a growing focus on, and people were getting more interested in and seeing opportunities. And of course, business centres and serviced offices have existed for many, many years. But the idea of co-working space and more modern design-led flexible workspace is also now playing a part. So it looked a really interesting, vibrant industry to get involved in, and that's proven to be the case.
Yeah, and then we've worked in the civil and the public sectors as well, and a lot of them in the last couple of years have moved towards flexible workspaces and co-working spaces as well. I know when we rolled out our first space in Northern Ireland, we would have had a couple of those types of organisations in with us, and it worked really well. And I think going forward, there's going to be more and more of that.
Yes, no, absolutely. And my last job, I was based for much of that in flexible workspace that was particularly focused on tech companies, and I was working for a tech charity essentially. So that, I think there is all sorts of, whether you have that bespoke curated groupings of businesses or whether it's the real mix that often comes and provides interesting opportunities perhaps between different companies that are in a shared workspace.
Yeah. Jane, who are the types of members that you would typically work with, and how have you seen the member makeup change over the last couple of years?
So as I said, it's really, really diverse. I mean, I think you mentioned our change of name, and we were the Business Centre Association, and it's absolutely not the business centres that are no longer part of our association. They very much are. We have a lot of companies that are our core business centre and call themselves that. But we also have a wide range of other types of flexible workspaces as well. So I think that's continuing to evolve. I mean, it's clearly been a difficult 18 months, and we have lost some members, but we've gained as well. So I think that's the important thing. And I'm in the light of our conference, I've had a conversation with a few people who have got in touch, having picked up more understanding of us since then. And I'm going to view a potential new member next week and see what their workspace offers. And that's at the more large design-led space in London. But we have members throughout the UK, and I think that's really important to us as well, that it is, we are the UK Trade Association, and that allows us in terms of lobbying of UK government. It also does complicate things, I found, more over the last year in terms of what each of the different nations' governments are doing as well. But it is
try being where we are on the border in Ireland here. It's interesting.
Yes.
So have you seen many member organisations change their description from co-working to flex? How are you finding that? What's the feedback on that at the moment?
Yeah, and co-working seems to be, in terms of its general use, co-working as an alternative word for flexible workspace seems to be particularly American focused, and they will often, it's just co-working. Where I think more in the UK, co-working is seen to be desks in a shared area, and you come in and you sit in your desk. So that seems to be the more general use of it, but there are definitely differences, and some businesses will call themselves co-working but still offer private offices. But I think it's words always vary, don't they, really?
Yeah, they vary geographically. I mean, we find that even just in Northern Ireland, depending on different spaces. But I think co-working traditionally is more, yeah, you've got your flex offices, flexible workspace, but it's more the community side of things as well that
Yeah.
you offer,
Yes.
and the people side. But it's
Yeah.
interesting where different locations interpret it in very different ways from different perspectives.
Yeah, and a variety. I think that probably also emphasizes the variety of what different companies offer, and that really varies as well. And yeah, it can just be that it's just a desk and that's it, and that's what people are wanting, and they choose to take that as the service, whereas other companies will offer all sorts of additional support and networking opportunities, and that is a feature of what they do. There's real variety.
Yeah, completely. What would you say are the main, not necessarily challenges, but the main needs of your member businesses right now? What are you getting asked about the most?
So I guess we're in a sort of changing position now, and over the last 18 months, I mean, my role has been very much dominated by conversations on what the coronavirus guidance means from government, means for our member businesses. And I started out sending coronavirus update emails to our members, and I've done over 40 of those now, because the guidance just kept changing, and then the guidance got more and more complicated as you needed to look at each different country was doing. But I think, yeah, we're now, there's still some questions coming on, and yeah, I think that's going to continue for a while. And different members are taking different approaches on aspects such as whether to still be wearing face masks and other things. But I think we're also getting back to more business as usual, and the questions that come in are relating to information on compliance with money laundering regulations, and also what other members are experiencing in terms of the types of businesses that are coming into them now. And I think there's definitely a trend towards people looking for smaller offices and a smaller number of desks. And so some of our members have reacted to that by splitting down larger spaces to create smaller private offices. So I think that's an area that is, I think, a particular interest to people, because that's also obviously a bit of a gamble if you're doing it unless you've got absolute business secured, and even then it's a long-term, if you're building walls and moving things around, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah. Oh, we found out that the painful way. But certainly from our perspective, the two-person office would be the most common request right now. But I think the other thing, yes, for us would be, there does seem to be a lot more compliance, certainly in the last couple of years, with the COVID workplace compliance and MLR, anti-money laundering, HMRC compliance, that side of things is constantly being updated. And it's really keeping on top of that.
Yes, and I think that's understood in the industry to be really important. And we have something called the Virtual Office Forum, which brings together the different our member companies, but also representatives from HMRC, the police, trading standards, and that usually meets 3 times a year roughly, and brings some of those representatives together, which I hope demonstrates that we take this seriously as an industry. And people find it really helpful to be able to ask questions of the authorities to make sure that they're getting it right as well.
Yeah, and with the members you've got, it's bouncing the ideas and the questions off of each other. And a lot of people, if you don't know what you don't know, they wouldn't have even thought of certain things. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and sharing of information, and people being aware of, frankly, the kind of sort of scams that might be going on, and so that they can avoid pitfalls. And I think that's helpful in terms of that sharing of information.
Yeah. So moving on, you must have seen a massive shift in the types of workplace setups, with each operator offering something very different, but also changes in the types of experiences and facilities that the end users are looking for. Could you expand on what you've seen from that perspective? I know we mentioned people are looking for more cellularized spaces, but is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the move for looking for for office space closer to home to stop the commute is definitely a big trend. Obviously, that's particularly the case around London, and that's the hybrid model of working is the buzzword of the moment, and that people will continue to go into cities, but they might supplement that with office space nearer to where they live, and clearly the working from home continuing as well to some extent. But I think in terms of what people are looking for, I think environmental and sustainability issues are
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. Our conference should have been in May 2020 originally. We were third time lucky on it because it should have been a May this year as well. But at that point, we were obviously already in the planning stages, well advanced by the time we got to March of last year. And the focus of that was going to be on environmental aspects and sustainability. And we chose to go with a different direction when we finally got to the conference, but we did end up covering quite some of those issues within the conference, and there is a real interest in that. And I think actually that's driven by people who are coming back into offices, but seeing that as a really important issue. So,
Yeah.
So I think that's going to continue to be an area that goes up the agenda. It hasn't been lost because of the pandemic.
It was interesting, that point, because it still seems, we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go with that side of things. And again, it depends on whether you're a larger operator or a smaller, and the investment that you can put into your build, not necessarily just the buildings, but the education of the members within those spaces as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I spoke to one of our member companies last week at the conference, which is a single site centre, and he was saying how difficult he's finding it to get recycling material taken away, and so he really wants them to be, as a business, to be recycling everything, but it's proving really challenging to actually do that in practice. So
yeah, that's a good point.
That's the other side of it.
Yeah, so it's how the relationships and the partnerships you've got with your local, not necessarily the local council, but local amenities or the surrounding area as well. So there's a lot of different things that can come into that affects how well it can be rolled out, I guess.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think some of these things, probably if you're a user of them, you think, well, why isn't there recycling facilities in this building? It's obvious, but the practicalities are a bit different.
Yeah, and the other thing came out of last week, I touched on that earlier, is yes, people are moving to the regions a lot more, but there seems to still be a growth in the city hubs. They're not slowing down anytime soon. So
No,
there's still a need
absolutely.
for them.
Yeah, and we're also seeing the repurposing of buildings that particularly retail to workspace, and that includes, Oxford Street in London has got itself a number of examples of that. There's now flexible workspace on one, I think, the top floor, the upper floors of Selfridges, and I think we're going to see other department store space turning into flexible workspace. So no, absolutely, it's still, I think, the cities, and they are going to come back. I mean, I live not far from London and have would normally go in once or twice a week, but I've just started going back in a bit more, and definitely seeing numbers picking up, and people. I live around the corner from the train station, and the car park there every day I see it gets a little bit busier, so people are going back to cities as well.
Definitely. And was it Zoe Ellis-Moore was talking about Westfield as well, and there's a new co-working space that opened up there.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and that's a huge shopping centre, and then another of our member companies has recently opened up in Stevenage, which is town just north of London, and that's converted retail into workspace in a largish town centre, which has seen quite a decline in terms of the retail aspect, but other uses coming in, and that's got to be beneficial for everybody. It keeps town, if it can keep town and city centres more alive, but with different uses, and people to use the shops and facilities that remain, then that's beneficial for everyone.
Which brings me on to the point of placemaking was another area talked about, that seems to be quite a buzzword right now it's not just about the bricks and mortar of the buildings, it's all about the experiences of the members and the flex operators, and how that can enhance the whole work life thing.
Yeah, I think probably the experience as well, people working from home, is that if they're going to go back into the office, it needs to be as good or as better than the experience they had of working from home. And I'm sure, I think businesses are finding that if they want people back in the office, then they need the facilities to entice them to do that. And I think the other aspect that we're seeing in terms of how office space is changing is more areas with chairs and sofas and things, and it's not just about desks and chairs, it's about the whole experience of working in a comfortable environment and being able to have conversations and
be able to change where you're working during the day, and having the green spaces where you can pop down for a coffee. And I know everything can't necessarily be under one roof, but certainly close by. And then the other things would be the communications links and the transport links being as good as they can be close by as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely important. I think during the sort of depth of the pandemic a bit more, it was the companies that had car parks often, that were workspaces that had car parks, that were able to have people back in a bit more quickly, that weren't having to rely on public transport to get to where they wanted to be. But again, hopefully that is going to gradually return to something more like we remember.
Wasn't it? We've a lot of people back in our office, but then we'd be on the border, so sort of halfway between Dublin and Belfast. So typically, a lot of our clients would have client bases all over Ireland. So because we're such a central point, it makes sense for them to be in the office. So it's interesting how this placemaking is playing out. And then coming onto the side of automation and technology, seamless integration in workspaces for the end users and the flexible operators. How have you seen that pan out, and how more further forward do you think people need to go rolling those out?
So there's definitely, technology was always high on the agenda of most workspaces, in particularly in terms of being able to provide a good connections, and whether that's Wi-Fi or telephones if needed and things like that. But I think the rise of Zoom and Teams meetings has meant that's becoming an ever increasing focus. We did a member survey recently of sort of the state of the flexible workspace industry for our members, and one of the questions was about what services that people were looking to put in the next 12 months, and video conferencing comfortably topped that list. So those that haven't got it are definitely looking at that, and there are all sorts of innovations as part of that in terms of making sort of seamless experience for people that are in the meeting room, along with those that aren't in the meeting room.
That was really interesting.
So I think there's going to be a lot of additional gadgets and facilities and things that can be added on to make that more seamless. But yes, technology plays a really big part in all sorts of ways. But interestingly, on that question on the survey, it was followed by a list of sort of health and well-being type services that people were looking to add, whether that was gyms or fitness classes or air purification, and that was it was the video conferencing, and then lots of health and well-being type activities. So
activities, so they were focused more on around the activities as opposed to the health and well-being environment, like green spaces. Or
I don't think green spaces, but both in terms of activities of actually running classes or whatever, but also having the facilities there as well. So I think it's again, that perhaps reflects people's personal changing priorities, and that work is kind of a part of your broader life, isn't it?
So. And a lot of what we've seen, it comes back to the productivity side of things. So people want seamless door access and be able to just do things really, really quickly without necessarily having to ask us to help them. They just want it done. So door access, being able to tap into the Wi-Fi and LAN, that sort of thing, VPN themselves, rather than having to reach out for other people to do it. It's just everything needs to be quicker.
there's really, again, so many options now available for businesses to be able to make that seamless. I visited one of our member companies a few weeks ago, and their setup means that it's quite difficult to have a reception desk because they're in a number of buildings effectively. So the way that they were able to use door access systems from externally that allowed visitors to connect straight through, but to also give that personal approach of the company name effectively being on the door as well, I think those things that sort of service level plus technology can work well together and make both better.
Yeah, no, that's worked really well for us as well, actually. No, we've had to put quite a bit into the technology integration side of our business, as we wouldn't necessarily have a full-time presence there all the time, but it does work well from both sides. Do you think there needs to be more collaboration in terms of between different operators and industry standards? Is that something that could be done?
So we have a code of conduct that our members sign up to, which is fairly straightforward, but it certainly requires high standards of customer service and working well in how people are treated. And in terms of, I think choice is important. I think being able to have those different types of spaces is really important. And for some businesses, being able to have workspace that is really high level design and looks beautiful, and they want to be able to impress visitors that come in and things, and that's for some businesses that's really important. For others, they just want a plain straightforward office that they can come in and work in every day, and they're not looking for interaction, they perhaps don't have any visitors, and different types of working environments. So I think it would be a mistake to generally standardize things too much, because I think that choice is so important. Clearly, as an industry, we want to see high standards, however that whatever the type of services and space that's provided, and that's important for the whole industry, because as with whatever it is, the sort of bad examples then bring down everybody and bring down the reputation. But I think the having the choice means there's kind of a place for everybody, really, both in terms of workspace operators, but also people looking to work there.
No, I completely agree. But maybe from the compliance angle and at a broad framework, like you said at the beginning, but it's very different depending on industry and the building type. There's so many things that come into play there. It is hard to have set standards there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think and I obviously I've not been able to do it so much in the last 18 months, but I'm looking forward to going back to being able to visit many of our member locations in person, because it's amazing seeing the different types of buildings and how they're used. And we've got member companies that are in beautiful listed buildings in the centre of London, and then and others on business parks on the outskirts of cities, and then there's the smaller companies in town centres perhaps. So the diversity is huge, and that obviously of the type of building leads to the type of service and space that is provided.
And also, again, the geographical locations, you might be governed by slightly different regulations, policies if you're within a devolved government area.
Yes, just to add to the complexity. But yes, I mean, and also in we're looking at changes to planning regulations are also leading to different types of spaces that perhaps in the past might not have been used as office space. Now that's becoming possible. So lots of changes in that world.
Okay, Jane, what sort of environment sparks your creativity, and then what grounds you to become your most productive self?
I think it's the right space for what you're doing in the right place. I mean, right now talking to you, I'm at home because I can absolutely guarantee that there will be no interruptions, no suddenly someone opening the door with a post or something. But I'm going into the office after this and catch up with a colleague, and being able to have frankly the big screen on my desk in the office is good in itself. So I think I'm probably quite adaptable. I think in early on in my career, as with most people of my sort of age, then you would absolutely expect to be going into the office every day, and then working from home was a rarity. Whereas now I think everyone's becoming much more adaptable, and it's finding the right type of space. I definitely like being able to meet with people face to face and work with colleagues face to face. I think in terms of our small flexible space association team, over the last few weeks we've been back in the office to get together for most of the week, not all of the week. We're doing a mix of things as most organisations are, but it's definitely helping things run more smoothly, and being able just to have that casual conversation about things as they come up, and really just hearing what other people are talking about on the phone just means that everyone's awareness grows of what's going on, and the understanding,
rather than having to keep writing notes to, or when I speak to such and such I have to converse about this.
Exactly.
No, I'm definitely the same. I think depending on my mindset and the projects I'm working on, I might flip between a couple of different spaces, but the whole hybrid thing works brilliantly for me.
Yeah, no, I think we had to, everyone in an office-based role had to make working from home work last year, and I think it has been effective. But I think, and at one point last year, there was clearly beginning the views of, well, we're never going back to the office again. But I think as time's gone on, there's a realization that are a lot of benefits to being able to be together with colleagues and in the same environment and speaking, on a much easier basis. But that mix is, that the word hybrid is is definitely going to continue.
The new buzzword. So Jane, where can people find out more about you and the organisation?
So we just have a brand new website as an organisation. So it's www.flexsa.co.uk, FLEXSA. Brand new website. So lots about us there, and then also across Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're quite active on as well.
Fantastic. Well, Jane, thanks so much for your time. It's been exciting talking about the evolution of the office space, and long may the positivity continue.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. You can find more information in the show notes or on our website, thehubnewry.com. While you're there, why not join our mailing list so we can keep you in the know about everything we're up to? And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen so you don't miss an episode. Powering Productivity is presented by me, Suzanne Murdock. It's produced by Emily Crosby Media.